What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about aliens and the universe as a whole. Now, when I bring this topic up with different people, those who are more open-minded and willing to actually hear me elaborate and discuss and get into the details from a mathematical and scientific standpoint, it's just much more likely and probable that there are aliens out there who are intelligent, rather than there not being. And I find that the people who are like, oh my goodness, look at this nerd, this crazy kid talking about aliens, they're the people who are just not really well knowledgeable about. They're not knowledgeable about the topic. They typically are girls, and they typically only are concerned about partying, Instagram, and where they're going to get their next shot of tequila. Not tequila. They don't have something so expensive at parties, Miller Lite or Bud Light. But you get the point. So if you will spare me the time, I'm probably going to really lighten your world. If you're one of those females out there who only care about Instagram, I applaud you for sticking around, because this video is probably going to, at least make you learn a little bit more about this world, and I applaud you for having that initiative. Thank you. So let's get down to it. I linked the article in the description below that elaborates deeply on this, and there's also Wikipedia that's even more detailed on the subject, but the article below is more user-friendly and savvy to people who just want the basics. So basically, this topic is something that very much interests me, and I've actually watched quite a few videos on the topic from scientists and physicists and channels like Big Think and people like Michio Kaku talking about it. Now, there's a lot of good stuff and bad stuff about Michio Kaku, but let's just get down to it. First and foremost, let me just give you the long story short summarization of the observable universe. So there's an estimate of about 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. That's the keyword, observable, which means there might be more. From what we can see from our reach with our telescopes and our estimates, there's at least 100 billion galaxies out there. And there could be more, or an infinite amount beyond those that are just not observable or estimatable based on our current technology. There could be 1,000, 1,000,000, an infinite amount more. I wouldn't be surprised if there is, like whoever created this, if someone did, or if it just spontaneously created itself, just by that sheer amount alone, 100 billion. That's more people. That's more than the people on this planet. And you guys don't understand how much a billion is. Until you see a billion of anything, you don't understand how much that is. So 100 billion, how many zeros is that? A million is 6 zeros. You tack on another 3 zeros, that's a billion. 100 billion, tack on 2 more zeros to that. 100 billion galaxies. Now, what is a galaxy? A galaxy houses tons and tons of star systems in itself. So when we get down to a star system, that is a sun, some sort of star, which has a lot of things like planets orbiting around it. So each galaxy of those 100 billion galaxies house, and obviously the estimates range widely, but from 100,000 to a billion. Let me just get a better approximation real quick. Some people say there's hundreds of billions of star systems in a galaxy. Our galaxy that we are in, our star system is in, is the Milky Way. And therefore, we have the sun, and we're on planet Earth. We are orbiting the sun with 10 other planets. However, that's just one star system, along with 200 billion other star systems, and we're probably more accurate in estimating our star system, the amount of star systems in our galaxy, than the others. So 200 billions, where we're estimating around. That's how many star systems. Assuming, and this could be a lot more or a lot less, assuming there's around 10 planets per star system, you're tacking on two more zeros to that 200 billion, putting you into the trillions of planets in our galaxy alone. Now multiply that number, 20 trillion, by the number of galaxies in our observable, keyword observable universe, not counting those that have yet to be found that may exist. We are talking 1 trillion times 100 to 200 to 500 billion. We're multiplying those two numbers together to get a really, really big number of planets. So obviously that sheer amount just makes the probability of a lot of stuff very likely. Even the slightest possibility of something happening becomes very, very possible because of the sheer amount. This is called, I believe, the Fermi paradox. It's based on that whole theory. The problem with this, though, is that you still need a lot of occurrences. There's this one statement that was made to contradict it. They're like, okay, if it's so likely, then how come a lobster won't just walk into my house and be cooked by itself and fall into my plate? Well, first off, a lot of people are misrepresenting the probabilities of that happening. That's like a 1 in 1,000 trillion chance. It's a ridiculously small chance of that happening, and the amount of lobsters and the proximity, there's so many variables on top of that to create it. So that in itself also sort of diminishes the fact, and also implies that we are unique in the fact that we're probably 1 in however many zeros you want to put in. However, that's the chance that we exist. For us to come about, we have to be in the best optimal conditions, just close enough and not too far away from the sun, with the right chemicals, the right size of the planet, etc., etc., to create living conditions which can create life. And starting with the primordial soup, a lot of those things initially have to be just perfect, and it's been said that if our planet was just tilted a few degrees in the wrong direction, or a little bit closer or a little bit farther away from the sun, it wouldn't have worked. And it goes on and on. So the probability that we existed is very, very, very slim compared, looking at all the other planets out there. Having said that, though, it also implies that there's the fact that there's probably other scenarios and situations and environments and chemicals that in the right way would also produce life, although it'd be completely different. Perhaps the planet is 5 times as big as Earth, but to compensate for that, it's half as close to the sun, or a quarter of the way of the distance that our planet is from the sun. And all these other things, like perhaps you don't need oxygen or water, but these other bizarre chemicals, and therefore the organisms that hatch from this bizarre planet are also living and intelligent, but they're completely different and function and communicate much differently from us. So what am I getting at here? Regardless of the fact that our probability is very, very small, it's based on the sheer amount of planets out there, and it's just it just seems very obvious that there's potentially life out there, and it'd be arrogant to think that there is not. There's probably many civilizations that may be 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000 years more advanced than us, and we're just at the cusp of advancing. We're just at the start of it. I mean, 100 years ago, 200, 300 years ago, we were just these primitive beings riding horses around, and now we're starting to get into technology, vehicles that we can travel on, flying through the air, and it's looking at it from an exponential curve in terms of knowledge and improvements in technology. It's first off a very bumpy road. There's so many variables that could destroy us as a civilization. The biggest ones are obviously smaller but still very pressing, like global warming. That's actually the biggest. If people look to like terrorism or stuff like that, or disease, typically those sort of things, even at their peak, it's not going to wipe out the whole population. Maybe worst case scenario, 10%, 20% before we either develop a mutation that will survive based off our history, or just bounce back in resilience somehow. And so, having said that, we are very. It's almost like our whole civilization, the whole planet. It's this resilient thing that's having a constant bumpy ride, and it's not just on a micro scale where each organism is being naturally selected or a population, but the whole planet in itself is being naturally selected to be able to survive and make it to that next level. And the ones that do, they develop, and then after a million years, who knows, maybe Star Wars is occurring. But if it doesn't, then you're naturally selected out, survival of the fittest. Perhaps you don't make it to that next level, that type 2 civilization, type 3 civilization, where you can produce sustainable energy before you run out of natural resources and so forth. And it's one of those things where it's like we kind of have to figure out, can we make it to that next level, or are we destined to? Because if you look at our planet, the planet and all its species have gone through 6 or 7 or 8 great extinctions that the biggest ones have taken out like 99% of the organisms around. And there's apparently a period in our distant past where we had many more species than we had now. And so it's just like that 1% that survives, it just differentiates and keeps going. And so our planet itself is this sort of resilient thing. And so it's like, are we just another extinction waiting to happen? Will we screw up so badly that everything on our planet will be toast, and then one day, a million years from now, as I think Michio Kaku says, when another civilization who has made it, just coasting along in their starship, they see us, we're just this like rubble planet that didn't make it to that next level, that was just destroyed by nuclear warfare or whatever, and it was just naturally selected out. And after a lot of thought, I actually did a video about this. I don't think that is probable or true because of the deep resilience of our species, not the human species, but the species on Earth. Basically, after a lot of thinking and researching, and after being enlightened by a professor, it's just very clear that even in the worst case scenario, if humans wiped out everything on the surface of the planet, some species will still survive. Probably numerous species, those buried 50 miles below the surface. Some microorganism or microbial cell of some sort will survive and produce and sporulate and continue. And so when people say protect the environment, protect us from global warming, a lot of people think that's to protect the whole planet. But in reality, no matter what happens, it seems like some organism will survive. Moreover, what we're really truly trying to do is save the human species, and there's nothing wrong with that. Our species is it's a very good thing in some ways and a very bad thing in other ways. So with all this though, I do think that in terms of planets and the universe, there's this huge question that's talked about in the majority of the article link below, which is just that, well, why haven't they contacted us? And I think, the article and the Wikipedia for this whole topic produces all these reasons, and I just think it's so arrogant, the whole question in itself, there's so many answers to this question that are posed, like, oh, well, perhaps we're the first, or which is also a very arrogant question. Like, if you are to initially acknowledge the fact that there are numerous other civilizations based off the sheer amount of planets out there and the probabilities, then it's just like it's a very arrogant thing to say that you're the very first out of all of them as well. That's even more unlikely. But heck, again, someone has to be the first. But regardless, though, I just think that whole question is arrogant, and they go on and on to explain numerous reasons why this is happening. Perhaps like they are here, we just don't understand them, or they're here but they're just doing stuff that are just so advanced that it just be too hard to explain to us, or they are here because they're just rare and it's hard to get in contact, yada yada yada. And from what I've taken out of it, I'm just like I'm thinking that we're just so primitive that there's no way they would have any reason to contact us. And it's very arrogant to think that they would care to do any of that. If they have the ability to travel light years in an instant and so forth, what need do they have to take over or use our natural resources? They probably have sustainable energy that can produce a billionfold what we can in energy in a second, costless. And that's the sort of energy you need to travel at light speed. And to just think, oh, like in those sci-fi movies, they've come to invade to steal our natural resources. It's just like that sort of parasitic thinking is very human-minded, and it doesn't make sense. But more so, the whole question is just arrogant. It's like, oh, we're so great, they should be contacting us. It's like, no, they don't really care. And they actually quote something I was about to quote, which is what Michio Kaku did. He did a little analogy on it, and I think his whole point about this was similar to what I just expressed, but the article sort of construed it differently. Basically, his analogy was just imagine an anthill and a 10-lane superhighway. Do you think it would make any sense for someone to stop their car, come down to the anthill, and then explain to the ants what a superhighway is, or what's going on with it? Would they even understand? And so, for me, that just sort of illustrates more this whole idea of maybe if something like that were to exist, they wouldn't, for any reason, come down to contact us. It's like, for instance, us talking to ants or very primitive human beings. On the other flip side, though, the article construes it in a different way. The article says something along the lines of that we basically they are trying to contact us, and they just can't because if they even try to explain these sort of things to us, they wouldn't, because it's just so far beyond what we're about that we wouldn't be able to understand anyways. Which sort of implies the whole idea that they're trying. I think more so that they sort of thought it out, and they're like, it's useless. They wouldn't understand. It's something so beyond us. Which reminds me of a little bit, touching a little bit on religion, how people talk about deities or God. They're just like what they understand and what they're doing is just so beyond us and intangible and so immensely powerful and beyond our understanding that there's no way to understand it. Eerily similar, but it does kind of make sense. Another analogy, think about us, just us in the current age. It's only been like 100, 200, 300 years, but just in that 300-year span, imagine anyone from our age, Bill Gates or just some random person born in the current generation of youth. Imagine him or her whatever age you want him to be, 20, 30, 40, 50, explaining the internet or reddit.com or facebook.com to a primitive Native American 400 years ago. Would that even be possible, or would it just be something so beyond their understanding that they would literally just equate it to magic of some sort, witchcraft? Nor would they completely understand it. So that's just a little sampling of what could happen. Now imagine not a 400-year time span of this exponential increase in our understanding and toolkit of technology, but think about 1,000 years. 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, 100,000, a million, a billion, a trillion. And those time periods are not necessarily that, crazy, considering just the lifespan of the universe or just the lifespan of the Earth itself. And it's just like, look, it took billions of years for us to get to this state. And humans only came millions of years ago. And the planet was it took billions of years for us to get to this state through evolution, and only a few thousand centuries to get to this point. And the bulk of our technological innovation has been in the past 100 years. So we finally hit that point. So in my opinion, the exponential rate is just going to blow up. So imagine what will occur a million years from now. I don't think Star Wars or Star Trek is that far-fetched. It's probably not perfect or realistic, but who knows what the hell is going to happen, assuming we don't die from something before then. So that's all I really want to say, and I don't think a lot of people understand this. And there's a lot more for me to talk about on the topic, and I've thought about it a lot. And I think it's very important that a lot of people, understand this, share this with people. I think it's ridiculous when you think about it. Having said all that, though, I think ultimately you get to there's a point where I think technology is just it will get to a point where it is literally like magic, if it isn't already. And that's a whole nother topic for another video, which I will do. So stay tuned for that, and as always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Check out the article below. I'll see you guys later.